Hi everybody, and welcome back to Teachers Talk Money, where I help teachers master their money in order to give back to themselves. I'm really excited for today's video because I love sharing the exact numbers, the exact cost that it took for me, especially when it comes to things like travel, which can be so nebulous. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I'm filming this a few months early, so I really don't know where the world is going to be at in terms of the pandemic and what travel restrictions will be in place or what safe travel will look like. So I truly don't know how timely this will be by the time it comes out. And then the other piece is that I'm using numbers from a few years ago when I took my trip to Iceland. That being said, I'm still really excited to share the numbers with you, and I hope that it can be something that you can at least use as inspiration, if not exact numbers, for an upcoming trip that you might have to Iceland. So we're going to talk about exactly how much money it cost me to travel to Iceland. I think it will be a lot less than people are probably anticipating because we kept our costs low in some areas very intentionally and we splurged very intentionally in other areas, but we'll get into all of that. So let's start with a little bit of background. 2 years ago, me and my partner and 3 of our close friends took a trip to Iceland for 9 days. This was the first trip that I could ever really consider unfrugal because there were so many expenses and costs that I never would have put out the money for as somebody who was like sacrificing a lot in debt, and also just somebody who came from a mindset that you should be really frugal all the time, and especially when you travel. So instead of having a frugal mindset where our goal was to cut costs at every turn, we had an unfrugal mindset where we thought very intentionally about what we wanted to spend our money on in order to fully experience the country while we were there. Before we get into the video, I just want to emphasize that the communication that I had with this group of friends was really the main reason that this was able to be a super intentional, well thought out and planned trip financially, because they were all very open about budgets and numbers, and we decided as a team what we were all willing to spend. We also kept a spreadsheet of our expected costs and a separate spreadsheet where we detailed who paid for what, so that there was complete clarity and no confusion or forgetting about things when it came time to pay each other back for things. Being on a trip with friends who were transparent and proactive and not freaked out about talking about money was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I realize that this is not always the case, and sometimes it's just a lot harder to communicate with certain friends about money, but I still encourage you to push yourself to do it, just in order to have complete clarity and not have any question marks when it comes to what you're going to spend on a trip, because these things add up quickly. I have been on trips with super open and proactive and transparent people with money, and I've been on trips where people have been completely non-communicative about that, and I have to say that taking the guesswork out of it makes a huge difference. So when we sat down and planned this trip, the amount that we determined to spend, not including our airfare, was $1,000 per person. This was mostly doable because we were camping most nights, but as you'll see, we also did spend quite a lot of money on certain activities that really enhance the experience as well. So we decided what was important to us and what was less important to us, and that is how we determined what our costs would be. So let's get into the exact numbers. Other than the cost of airfare, the most expensive purchase was the car rental, which was absolutely necessary. This came out to $126 per person between the 5 of us. We traveled around the entire island, around the entire ring road, and so having the car was completely necessary. I would say that if I were to do this trip again, I would probably splurge on a bigger vehicle though, because we did get the cheapest one that we could find that would fit all 5 of us, and it was quite snug in there with all of our luggage. In fact, we even had to throw some things in a tarp every morning and tie it up onto the top of the car in order to make it all work. So that was probably a place where we were cutting corners a little too much. That being said, it worked out. The cost of gas was only $51 per person for traveling around the entire island for 9 days. So all things considered, that really wasn't bad, and I think it was actually less than we had intended to spend. We did pay $24 per person for, I believe, 2 extra checked bags, and this was really crucial in terms of getting all our camping gear, fitting it all on the plane. And then with some of the heftier camping gear, we decided to rent it instead of taking it on the plane so that we wouldn't have to pay for another piece of checked luggage. And the rentals came out to $36 per person. So to get all of our gear, we spent about $60 total for the entire trip per person, which is a much less than we would have spent if we were staying in Airbnbs or hotels through the journey. So it was a pretty easy trade-off considering we were all people that already liked camping. Now, we did spend the first night in an Airbnb that was just outside Reykjavik, and this was $36 per person. So again, not too bad, and we were just doing it for the one night to be nearby and to get some good rest before we set off on our long journey. The rest of the time we camped, and the campsite costs came out to $50 per person. And this was every fee for every night. So again, not too bad. Then for groceries, we spent $39 per person, which is much, much less than we had anticipated to spend. And what I spent individually, which is like food at restaurants, souvenirs, transfer fees, everything else that was just me, came out to $138. So those were all kind of the basic costs, but now let's get into the fun stuff, which are the activities that we spent money on. I'm going to put the name of each place where we did each activity down below because I cannot pronounce any of these things. And if I tried, I would probably be disgracing the entire island of Iceland. But I'll just kind of go through the activities and put the name down here so that you know where to go for these things. The first thing we did that cost money as an activity was kayaking in full dry gear. This was $40 a person, and it was totally worth it. It was honestly really beautiful, and I love to kayak, so while it was more expensive because of being in full dry gear, honestly, still a complete worthwhile experience for me. Another thing we did was we hiked on the largest glacier in Iceland and also all of Europe, which was a really beautiful thing. And that trip was also something that we were able to have bundled with a boat tour where we explored a glacial lagoon. And together those things were just $65 a person. And honestly, if I had to choose one activity to do again, it would be the glacier hike because it was just so breathtakingly gorgeous. Another activity we did was exploring an ice cave that actually was inside a volcano. So this was really incredible, really beautiful. The total cost for this was $164 a person, and I would say that this is another one I'd consider worthwhile as an experience. And then the final activity that we paid money for was snorkeling in glacier water in between tectonic plates, which was really beautiful, but I have to say I probably wouldn't do this one again because it was freezing. Even though we were there at a warm time in the summer, it was still so cold and it was a little bit painful. So this was beautiful. It was $130 a person. If you're really into snorkeling and you don't mind the cold water, like for example, my partner Brian used the wetsuit and he was diving down having a great time, then I think this would be something that's great for you. But for me, I don't think I would pay money to do this again. So for all of our activities, most of which were totally worthwhile, we paid $463 per person. So this was honestly probably the most expensive chunk of our trip, but it was what we decided intentionally that we wanted to be spending our money on in order to be seeing all of the beautiful things that the country had to offer. So our total expenses, not including airfare, came out to $963 a person, which was right under our target spending of $1,000 per person. The round trip airfare was $364, so the total cost of the trip was $1,327. To get to this amount, if you were to try to do the same trip that I did, you would only have to save $111 per month, which I think is a pretty doable goal for a lot of people. And if you wanted to visit Iceland without spending all the money that we did on the activities, You could relinquish those activities and visit for just $900, including airfare, which would only require you to save $75 a month for a year. And honestly, I think that that would totally be worth it too. I'm really glad I did most of these activities. That being said, there were so many free and cheap, beautiful things to see and do. And so we're gonna go through those now in case you're somebody who wants to go and not spend all the money on the pricey activities. So here are all the free and cheap things that we did in order. The first thing we did was we saw the Penis Museum in Reykjavik. This was actually the very first stop that we took after we got off the plane because it was right near where our Airbnb was. This was $15 per person and it was really interesting. They had a phallus from every species on the island, which is seriously so cool, especially considering it's just a couple of rooms as a museum. Here's a picture of me and my friends next to a sperm whale penis, which was the largest specimen that they had there. The Penis Museum is definitely a really strange place, but it was super fun. It was full of laughs and interesting anatomy, and they also have a really fun gift shop if you're interested in those kinds of gifts. The next thing we did, which was entirely free, was visit some hot springs. I'm pretty sure there are more free and cheap hot springs around Iceland, but the ones we found were in this location, which I'm gonna put on the screen because I don't know how to pronounce it. It takes a very steep, buggy 2-mile hike to get there, but I would say it is well worth it for the gorgeous views and these insanely beautiful and warm hot springs at the top. We went a little later in the day and it was much less crowded, and honestly it was one of my favorite things that we did. Something else you can see for free is Black Sand Beach, which is really one of the more iconic sites in Iceland. It was breathtaking to see just this black sand contrasted with such clear water, and also the rock formations by it are just insane. My friends actually climbed to the top of the basalt, but I mostly just used it as the natural chair that it was, and I ate some Doritos on there. You might see my outfit, my groutfit, and judge it, but just remember there are no rules in fashion. Another free, incredible thing to do is go to Iceberg Lagoon and Diamond Beach. So I've never seen an iceberg in person or a glacier in person, and I was totally in awe of this beach and these structures. The lagoon is a super peaceful place that just has amazing views of a gorgeous sky and all of these incredible ice formations. And Diamond Beach is called Diamond Beach because they have these chunks of icebergs break off and float down the beach, and you just watch them spin around in the water, and some of them wash up on shore, and I could literally sit there all day and watch this happen. I also want to include camping as a free and cheap thing to do because we got some of the most gorgeous views from our campsites. This campsite had a gorgeous view of the largest glacier in Europe and some beautiful mountains. And it had some great amenities like a laundry room, which was incredible for us because we were in dire need of that, and Wi-Fi, which was another pro. It was definitely the most expensive campsite that we used the entire trip, but it was well worth it for all of these reasons. And then this campsite was surrounded by a lake and mountains. It was super buggy, but it was some of the most gorgeous sunrises and sunsets that I've seen on the entire trip. This also included showers and only cost us $11 per night per person. The next thing we did, I cannot pronounce, but it was free. I'll show you pictures of it here. It is Hallowed Ground from Justin Bieber's I'll Show You music video, which, by the way, we did not watch before we went on the trip, and then we realized that we basically recreated it with all of the sites that we went to. But anyway, this was an incredibly, incredibly beautiful site. Definitely one of the places in Iceland that most makes you feel like you're in a magical alien planet. Another great thing to do is just find some beautiful waterfalls and stop at them as you drive. These were some of my favorite places to go because we would often have the entire thing to ourselves and we could just kind of slowly hike or chill, take a break from driving, and those were amazing. These should basically all be free. Some of the more touristy ones have like parking fees, but either way, super cheap and super beautiful. Also, I absolutely loved this canyon that I can't pronounce. This was probably one of my favorite places that we saw. The water was so blue and the basalt formations were just insanely beautiful. Because it's kind of out of the way of the normal stuff that people do sort of in the south of Iceland, this is a more like northern spot, there aren't as many tourists there when you visit. Also, this national park I can't pronounce was incredible. It surrounds a caldera, which is insane, and it features a path that like twists and turns and kind of you get to see all of these natural volcanic rock formations, and it's honestly just beautiful and breathtaking. There's also a lot of signs that teach you some interesting Icelandic lore, like about their Yule lads, and it's just charming, hilarious, and really fun. To sum up what the Yule lads are, one of our tour guides told us, in America you just have one Santa and he's jolly and nice, but in Iceland we have 13 and they're all mean. And in winter, apparently, they have actors come out to play the Yule Lad, so that might be super fun if you're traveling. We were there in summer, but if you're traveling in winter, definitely hit this national park and let me know what it's like. One of my other favorite free activities we did was see this beach, and this was one of my favorite things because we honestly just sort of stumbled upon it, and once again, we weren't there with any other tourists, and it was kind of like we had a private beach to ourselves when we were just sort of cooking and eating dinner there, and it was just sort of like a beautiful serendipitous moment. Nearby that beach is these ruins and lighthouse. Gorgeous, gorgeous area. We got there as the sun was setting, so it was even more sort of like beautiful but also creepy and ominous. And it was absolutely gorgeous. You see these remains of like fishermen's huts, and you can kind of go down into certain crawl spaces and stuff, and it's surrounded by, you know, all of the beautiful moss that you often see in Iceland. You just have to be careful not to step on it. So if you have any desire to visit Iceland, I strongly encourage you to budget and make it happen, because this was one of the most incredible things I had ever experienced. And not only did I feel really good about where I saved money on the trip, but I felt really good about most of the things that I spent money on during the trip too. It is a country and an island that is just indescribably strange and beautiful and almost sort of paradoxical with the ice and the lava that you see, and it's kind of just so unique and beautiful and really affordable for a lot of people, so I cannot recommend it highly enough. If you want to make this happen for you, you need to keep a budget. So go to the link in the description of this video and get my free budget template, and make sure you can set aside somewhere between $75 to $111 a month, and you can actually recreate the trip that I took. I hope you guys got a lot of value out of this video. Please make sure to like this video and comment and subscribe to my channel and do all of those good things. It means the world to me, and it really helps me grow this channel. Have an amazing week, everybody, and I will see you next week. Bye!